Hello, and welcome back to another inspiring episode of the Mindshift Mami Show, where we delve into the transformative power of mindset and inner work. In today's episode, I'm honored to have Shawniel Chamanlal join us to share her inspiring journey towards healing, empowerment, and how she is choosing to live her best life. Shawniel is a licensed clinical social worker, empowerment speaker, life coach, and consultant. She is also the CEO and founder of Healing Springs Wellness Center, a community of culturally diverse wellness practitioners and therapists providing trauma-informed and culturally competent care. Shawniel is passionate about empowering individuals to live a more authentic, meaningful, and fulfilling life, which makes her the perfect guest for the Mindshift Mami Show. Welcome to the show, Shawniel.
Thank you so much for having me, Jasree, and that beautiful introduction.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. So, Shawniel, let's go right into it. You are very transparent and vulnerable about your own personal journey towards healing and living your most authentic, best life. So, can you invite our listeners into what started your journey?
Yes, when I was 23, I had a breakup, and it was life-changing. It was putting the mirror towards myself and understanding why I had these emotional wounds. After my breakup, I tried to date, and I just kept on dating emotionally unavailable men. And it was a clue into the pattern of my life. I'm from Jamaica, and my mom migrated up here, and my dad chose not to come with us. And so there was this abandonment wound that I never knew I had until I started to do my own counseling. And with counseling, it showed me that not only was it showing up in my relationships, but it was also showing up in how I navigated life. Even though I was someone who dreamt big and I was very ambitious, there's times I was still playing it really small. So being able to really look at my own behaviors, my own issues with self-worth, and my own issues with just not having a father figure, was the catalyst to what I call is my spiritual awakening. And that was just understanding mindset and behavior. And if I wanted a healthy relationship, if I wanted to succeed in my career, healing was the thing that I needed to do. And I find that for a lot of the clients that we have, like we trace back the source of their challenges, it comes from, things that they were exposed as children that kind of shows up in their relationships, their work, their mindset. And it was just important for me as a therapist, once I got exposure to being in therapy, to do the same for my clients and share my story because it's transformational and it's encouraging for you to do the work as well.
Absolutely. So when you say you realized the root of your issue with the relationships, were you in therapy at that time when you had that realization, or was this beforehand? Like, when did you in your own journey make that connection? Like, oh my God, this is all connected and it's all, coming from this unhealed source.
Yeah. So it was after the breakup and then attempting to date again. And I was just kind of like, why do I keep on dating guys that, I was low on the priority list for them.
Okay.
There was a lack of trust and just reoccurring feelings. So what I did before starting therapy was journal. I started to journal my experiences, the feelings that were coming up. And the last guy that I dated, I call him my twin flame because yeah, I mean, I'm a Virgo, and a Virgo should probably not never date. But it was like the twin flame of like showing me how the role that I played in, right? So not in just blaming or being the victim, but I was just like, wow,
He was
reflecting on the
mirroring.
video. Yeah, it was just like, oh my goodness, like I'm actually contributing to this and attracting these partners. So with that realization, I was like, I can't do this on my own. And that's when I decided to find a therapist. And I never even knew what abandonment was or feeling that. And, she really showed me. And that was so empowering to kind of say, okay, even though I play a role, like there's an origin, like for where this started. And it's up to me to make those changes so that I could have better experiences in my life and my relationships. And I also realized I never had a frame of reference of what healthy relationships look like.
Mm.
So I had to really seek that, right, through
Mhm.
books and working with my therapist. So it just was so eye opening,
Mm.
doing that inner work and also having someone that I could talk to and had the skills to help me conceptualize what I was experiencing. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. And it's so true. I feel like you've probably been exposed to terminology a lot more than the average person being a therapist, but I feel like it's only been in recent years that we've kind of had this influx of terminology to use to then like relate either our past experiences with or how we have perceived people. Um, and sometimes it's a little bit probably on the farther end of the spectrum. But for example, like I feel like we hear a lot about narcissism these days, and because people can relate so much to having dealt with somebody with narcissistic tendencies in their life, whether it was a toxic relationship or a family member or something. And I feel like it wasn't even a couple years ago that the collective kind of had this terminology that is now like all over social media and helping people become aware of their roles in the relationships, like you said, and then also being able to see how other people are operating in their own space.
Like going back to frame of reference, right? So
Mhm.
when we have the terminology and the language and can see it in a different way, like frame of reference, if you've never been in a healthy relationship, if everyone around you is in a toxic or relationship that's not satisfying, your brain is just kind of magnetically picking that up as your frame of reference.
Mhm.
And so that terminology is helpful. Same thing with narcissism, right? If we are just kind of saying, because that's like it was a big fad, and I'm like, can you explain to me why do you think this person is narcissistic?
Yeah, that's why I'm like, I'm sure it's an overuse at this point, but it's just such a easy to grab example because everyone's like, yeah, I have a
Yeah.
narcissist in my life.
But then I'm like, so why? Like,
Mhm.
is why is it showing up for you? Right? Like, even getting to
Mhm.
like, yes, that person is invalidating that person's experience of encountering that narcissist, but why are you attracting that? Like, what role? And not saying like you're going after that narcissist, but
Mhm.
what happened in your life? What are the
Mhm.
signs? What is there maybe a lack of something that might be attracting? So instead of just kind of diagnosing the person that is not in front of me, it's really being able to just sit down and be like, why and how do we change it? Right.
Mhm.
And I think
Mhm.
that's where the empowerment comes from instead of just blaming the other person. And I did that a lot in those relationships. I was just blaming people like, oh, they suck. They did. But it was like when I looked at myself and I said, that's where the empowerment came because I'm like, I can make these changes. I can
Mhm.
heal whatever self worth issue, whatever confidence issue, whatever wounds, so that I don't attract those type of people anymore, or I know how to weed them out. At least,
Right.
right?
Yes. I
Yeah.
love that. And another thing you said earlier that I love is that you started to journal before you went into therapy. And it was interesting when you pointed out that you started to notice patterns in your relationships because the same thing happened for me where I feel like I really had my realization of my role in dysfunctional relationships when I finally computed learning about triangle, circle, triangle, circle, triangle, circle in like kindergarten or whatever grade they teach us about patterns to like, oh my gosh, this pattern in this relationship, pattern, fight, this, that, argument, this, lull, then this again, then this again. Finally computed in my head, like, these are patterns. And I have the power to stop that pattern, to throw a square in there instead of a circle or a triangle, to change. So then experimenting with that and seeing the profound difference it has made in my life just by like refusing to participate in the way that I have kind of been conditioned within myself to participate
Mhm.
has been life changing. And I think you point out such a great point that I would love our listeners to remember is it can be very easy to put the other person in it's very easy to make it black and white and make one person good and one person bad if there is a more maybe externally aggressive person in their harmful behavior, but it doesn't help you. It disempowers you by giving them the power and not realizing that all we can control is ourselves. And even by us simply adjusting our behavior and our reaction to people, we can completely liberate ourselves. So I love that you noticed the patterns and then you did something about it, because that's something that I think really resonates. And I would implore our listeners to remember that and think about that. Where are you seeing patterns in your life, in your relationships, where something's you're not happy with it and it's bloop, 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 bloop? What are the interactions that are happening that you can just change one of those and experiment and see what happens differently?
I love that. I love that. And just that example of the circle and the triangle. And I think also just acknowledging your feelings, like even
Mm,
the recurring feelings that are coming up for you. Like, because sometimes we
yes.
just dismiss our feelings, or we don't have, again, the words, and it's energy, right? So we want to take that out. And writing in physical form, again, allows you to acknowledge that and validate yourself and say, what do I need, right? What
Mm-hmm.
support do I need? Why do I keep on feeling this way? Even tracing back that feeling to an earlier time of like, when was
Mm,
the first time you ever felt that way? Right? Like, if it's
mm,
loneliness, when's the first time you ever felt that way? And how does that show up now in your life, in your relationship? And what do we do about it, right? So even the patterns of behaviors, but like even the emotions, just
yes.
validating, acknowledging it, and saying like, what do I need, is so powerful. And again, writing that out, talking it out,
Mm-hmm.
especially with therapy, like being able to really physically let it out
Mm-hmm.
internally releases something, and that awareness, you can
Mm-hmm.
make that change as well. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. And thank you for raising that about emotions, because it's so true. We can get stuck in our heads and making logic of things when, even when I think back to my example of when I decided to change patterns, it was because I was emotionally at my wit's end. I think I was having anxiety attacks at the time. My base level wasn't happy. It wasn't, that. And as I've learned more on my spiritual journey, I'm realizing how we are all meant to be joyous. Like that is our birthright. That is what we should be at. Feeling meh is kind of where I think society is at. And it's like, oh, you're great. And then some people are just feeling flat out terrible and horrible. So just trying to get out of that and listening to our feelings, like you said, and realizing, no, you should not be feeling this way. No, you deserve to be feeling happy and joyous in
Yeah.
relationships and connections. So, what now do we have to change after listening to our feelings to get that in motion? So, I love that. Um, this kind of leads me into the next topic I wanted to talk to you about, which is the power of our mindset and limiting beliefs. Um, you are making the connection to how many of the issues that we deal with as adults, or that follow us as adults, are rooted in our childhoods, which I just firmly believe. Every time I'm seeing something, like, oh, that's from childhood, that's from childhood, like it's all rooted, but some things can happen afterwards. But I wanted to get a little bit of your perspective about the role of your mindset in shaping our lives and experiences. And I
Yeah.
know you touched on this a little bit about how whatever we saw as kids, that was our norm, which is so true if you don't have anything else to base it off. So that alone in shaping mindset. But any more thoughts about mindset and how it shapes our lives and experiences?
Mindset is so powerful, especially like I'm big on manifesting, right? So we
Hmm.
talk about like, our thoughts and our actions, and just how much power, right? Our thoughts shapes our beliefs in the way that we see the world, right?
Hmm.
And depending on what you are trying to achieve or what you desire, looking at what is the source of like your thought process? Where did that come from? And again, sometimes it can come from our childhood, but sometimes it could just be like even societal conditioning. So, for
Hmm.
instance, when I was becoming a social worker, I'm a very ambitious person. I've always like been clear on what I want, but just thinking about what are the obstacles or barriers that tend to get in the way. And there was a lot of conditioning about you are not going to be a rich, I would call myself like a rich social worker before even time. And I would just listen to people tell me no. There was like
Mhm.
a chorus of people saying, you can't do it. It's not possible. And so that kind of is insidious and it can
Mm.
really seep into the way that you see the world, the way that you see yourself, right? And the same thing with like growing up. Like, what was the quality of your relationships with your parents? What did they say to you? Did they boost your self esteem and your confidence? Did they pull it down, right? So when you are now seeing the world and you're going after the things that you want, what is that, those obstacles, those limits that you're putting on yourself, right? And
Mm.
for me, I realized despite what people were saying about being a rich social worker, my mom had cultivated this level of confidence in us of really like, you're beautiful, whatever you want to do, you can achieve it.
Mm.
Those affirmations were there.
Mm.
So, despite what people were telling me no, I had the fuel of my mom conditioning that belief that I can go after what I wanted. And she validated that each time, right?
Mhm.
Versus some people don't have that. And it
Mhm.
pulls down on their belief system for themselves. And they're more able to filter in and have tunnel vision on, I can't, I won't, right?
Mhm.
Even think about scarcity, right? Like, we've all kind of
Mhm.
been conditioned to think there's not enough resources out there, right? So
Mhm.
when you're trying to go after your success or prosperity, what is the quality of thoughts that are going through your head? Or is it like, I can't do this, there's not enough, versus again reaffirming and having those affirmation like, yes, I can, and even looking up things that like proof, right? Like proof
Mhm.
that it has been done. So mindset really is that belief system and how you see yourself in the world. And you have to be very intentional about that.
Mm.
And you have to examine it. Like, what are the thoughts popping in my head right now when I think about the biggest thing that I desire? Is it going against me? Or is it going with me, right? Like, is it the
Mhm.
resistance? And so that's kind of like how I see mindset. And you can think about it with anything, relationships, success. Is there resistance and why, right? Like, where do we trace that back? And a lot of us have been conditioned, parents, society, our circle. And what do we do to reframe that so it doesn't
Mhm.
hinder us?
Yes.
Mhm.
And you were speaking exactly about limiting beliefs, which so many people have been ingrained with, and through no fault of their own or even their parents, because it can be a generational thing and a societal thing where, as we've touched upon, if you've only been taught a certain thing and you've only seen a certain thing and nobody has ventured out otherwise, done the validation work, like you said, experimenting, testing, seeing it works, keep on going, it's so easy to stay in that. And society, I do feel it could probably do a better job in some areas in terms of expanding our mindsets. Even I'm just thinking back to this year, I read this book called The Soul of Money. And
Mhm.
it's written by this woman who's like a philanthropist. She works for the Hunger Project. And she
Mhm.
wrote in it, everybody on the planet can be taken care of. And it kind of blew my mind in a way where I had thought that it's not possible. It's just not possible. If it hasn't been done, it's because it's not possible. But the way she discussed it and spoke about, scarcity and how our world is actually one of abundance and not lack. And it's just this overarching mindset of scarcity that has us acting those ways, just made me realize how much of a limiting mindset I still have with things. And imagine everyone thought that way, basically, where what a world we would be in if people are saying things aren't possible. Then they wouldn't be working in charities. People wouldn't be doing work like you're doing, knowing that everything makes a change and impacts people in so many different ways. I feel very strongly about limiting beliefs and helping our collective kind of expand and wonder and test out things and look for proof. There is so much proof when you really are looking as to people living abundantly, being successful, coming from nothing to something. There's so many stories, so many people that you can see, lifted themselves out of poverty, for example, are now super successful. And so much of that is just a shift in their mindset. I think it's important for everyone to realize that you can't achieve that success that you desire if you are still holding yourself back with these limiting beliefs and more of a fixed mindset. You have to intentionally, like you said, shift your mindset to one of abundance, to one of growth, so that you can then allow your brain to think creatively and dare and be, courageous to try things on, even when you don't know them 100%, and realizing that nobody knows 100%. And it's just taking a step. So do you want to speak a little bit about that in terms of you and your own journey? Because you started your wellness center. You're a CEO and founder of a wellness center that is just so beautifully unique in being specifically culturally competent. And, you clearly are seeing the disparities in therapy for minoritized communities. So can you speak a little bit about your creation, your manifestation perhaps of your business, and how that specific journey came about for you?
Yes. So what I have to say is like it goes back to I always call it manifesting because I know it's like such a terminology that we use a lot, and I love it because it's just like
Mhm.
abundance and manifesting is in my vocab
Yes.
every day. But for me, manifesting is goal setting with a spiritual twist.
Oh, I like that.
That's right. Like
That is so true, though.
yes. And so for me, you know, manifesting a healthy relationship was the start of my trajectory of knowing
Mm.
that, like, whoa, the world is my menu. Like, I can have whatever I
Yes.
want.
Yes.
Because it was so intentional of like, I
Mhm.
want, I looked at my past relationships and things that I enjoyed and things that I didn't. And I literally was like, I want a healthy relationship. I wrote a wish list. I prayed about it. I learned about more spiritual teachers like Dwayne Dwyer, and I learned about the law of attraction. So I really put my
Mhm.
heart and soul in really learning and scripting out like what would it look like to have a healthy relationship. And so that like learning those techniques and finally attracting my partner of 12 years was like, I'm badass. Like now I'm gonna call myself the manifesting queen, right? So, and I met him right when I was going into grad school, right? So for social work. And so that's when I was like, well, if I could have a healthy relationship now, I want a private practice.
Mhm.
And in the time when I wanted a private practice, everyone thought private practice was a place that you would retire. No one wanted to
Wow.
go in. It was like a place you retire. Your only options was community mental health,
Mhm.
and if you made it big, a hospital. And
Oh
I
my
just was going
goodness.
around like, I'm
How
gonna
limiting is that? Can we
yeah,
just pause and see that? Like, what a limiting belief that you're showing, even in education and like our majors, and like the expectations of what your only options are after you graduate. It's so crazy to like look at it now. What was normal for us in school, like, okay, it's either this or this, to like, excuse me, like
these are your options. Like you're in a box, and that is it.
yes.
And don't you dare think you're gonna make any money. So
Mhm.
I was going around and I was like, I'm gonna have a private practice. I did a vision board. There was a line out the door. Like I just was ignoring things that was being said. And it took a couple years. Like so I started with the intention
Mhm.
and that unapologetic, I don't care how it's
Mhm.
going to happen, but it's going to happen. So I
Yes.
graduated. I did work in those fields of community mental health
Mhm.
and the hospital, and I saw the disconnect. I saw the disconnect
Mm.
of how the medical model did not really pay attention to the emotional needs of the clients. So that was always in the back of my head, but I knew I had to make those aligned actionable steps to get to where I needed to be.
Mhm.
And, fast forward 5 years after, I was like, okay, I feel ready to open up my private practice. And I knew that I wanted a team. That was just undeniable. And I remember in 2020, the world, like I signed a lease and I was ready to go. and then the world shut down.
Oh, wow. So right before the COVID pandemic, you found a place, signed a lease for your private practice. Okay.
For my private practice, and this is where abundance comes in, because that when those ups and downs happen, again, you got to stay the course of your dream.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I pivoted. I was just like, you know what? We're just going to work from home online. I don't know how it's going to work, but we all pivoted. And then I decided, like I say, February, I opened the private practice 2020. And then by October, I was like, I want a team now. So I was like making my way. And the first person that I hired was one of my peers from college, because she just remembered how steadfast I was towards, I'm going to have this private practice. And she believed in my goal. She believed in it. And
Mhm.
so it just attracted the right people. And by that, maybe like 4 months later, I had a team of 10.
That's amazing.
And it was just that vision of staying that course, taking the actionable steps, because even when you're manifesting, it's not going to drop in your lap.
Yeah.
You still got to do the work. So that's where the goal setting and taking aligned action comes in, and sharing your dream and your vision. Like, I shared it with everybody. I didn't care if he was going to tell me no, but people remembered that. They remembered how dedicated I was to that goal and dream. And that's why I was able to hire so quickly.
Mhm.
And I had a coach. I had a coach that helped me to
Mhm.
put all the pieces of the puzzle together, because it was not if this was going to happen, it was
Mhm.
when.
Mm,
And it was waiting
mhm.
for that divine timing, and it opened up. I think 2020 was a shift when everyone was like, we need mental health. It was
Yes,
for
I
the
was gonna
divine
say
timing. Yeah.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
so it was just kind of say, I don't know how it's gonna happen, God. I don't know how it's gonna
Mhm.
happen, universe. But I know that there's an undeniable feeling that this is meant for me. And that's the confidence, right?
Yes.
And the confidence of believing that it's gonna happen despite the ups and downs in life.
Mhm.
And so that was part of it. And we have such a beautiful team. I could talk about that process, but just the vision to reality and that journey was, yeah.
And so that was in 2020. Do you wanna tell us a little bit about where you are today in terms of your business? Because 'Cause it's been, 4 years now. How are things looking now?
Well, we have a team of 15. So we have a holistic wellness center. Again, my journey through my social work career helped me to see that there was a disconnect in
Yes.
integrative care. And I wanted to really create a one stop shop for mind, body, and spirit, especially for people of color, right?
Mhm.
Because in that time of the pandemic, there was also a lot of racial injustice
Mhm.
happening. And I wanted to create a safe space for people of color to heal and
Mm.
understand the how holistic care could benefit them in so many ways. So we have nutrition, we have energy healing, we have
Oh.
a multidisciplinary team of therapists that really do a lot of trauma focused and cultural sensitivity care. And we're just so like our chemistry is so good, because I think people align to the vision, and just like,
Mhm.
this is a safe space for in like my team to heal and
Mhm.
gather. And it's also translating that passion that they have into quality client care. And I would say that, with that, we just continue to grow and attract the right clients. Like, we're very
Absolutely.
intentional with this vision to create the safe space.
Absolutely. And I can attest for that as a former client. Your energy of your business, of your organization comes right through on the website. So 100%. And I was very intentional about where to go, who I wanted to go to, and how I wanted to feel there. So 100% agree with just that energy ruminating through you and your other therapist and staff. I want to touch on some points of your story that you just shared with us so beautifully, just to make sure our listeners are listening here, because your story just for this organization alone is such a beautiful example of the law of attraction, as you said. And people should remember that we don't have to know A to B to C to D to E to F to G to blah, 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 to get to Z, which there's no Z anyways, because our lives are always expanding. And, that case, you just need to have that desire, feel that passion about what it is you truly want to do, and trust like you said confidence, which I agree, have that confidence. And if you're not having that confidence, just, you have to surrender to the law of attraction, surrender to that greater knowing of understanding that whatever you put out in the universe, you are literally going to attract to yourself. And I find it so interesting that the timing is just divine timing, because you needed that experience in the hospital setting to see where the lack was. That informed you there and in the other practice, I believe you said, where you're learning things and then you're seeing where there's a disparity. And then that allowed you, when you were ready, when that timing, when you got that experience behind you, to then create a wellness center that was holistic, because you saw the areas in our current healthcare system that were lacking, which is so amazing. The second aspect of you just attracting people. I think there's sometimes a space where we get a little bit about advertising ourselves. Which I'm glad that you brought up, how you were very loud and proud about what you wanted to do, because then that stuck with people and then you found yourselves with them years later. And I know some people can be uncomfortable with that sometimes. Can you maybe talk about that a little bit more as to why it is important, maybe when it is a time to share about your desires, whatever it is that you do want to manifest in life? And then when is the time to kind of let go and then let what you're already putting out in the universe come back and get attracted to you?
Yeah, I think the perfect time is once you are clear on what that goal and desire is. For a lot of us, we get nervous or sometimes paranoid of like, if I share this dream or goal with someone, then it's going to be taken away or it's not going to
Mm.
happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll trace that back to scarcity, right?
Yes, it's so true. Wow. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So being able to know that what you put out there, and you can think about the people that you want to share with, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, I was intentional. Like I was sharing with, I found a group actually called the Rich Social Workers, which was all social work
Oh.
entrepreneurs. Like I had said, God, please send me a group of like minded individuals. But most of the time, I'm just like, hey, this is what I'm doing. And it's like they'll get on board if they won't.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like sharing that affirms that you truly believe it and know it's going to happen
Mm-hmm.
regardless, right? So, and you never know who that key player is that's going to help you. Maybe it's a colleague, a friend that saw it. For instance, when I was wanting to do more speaking, I created a vision board and it was a digital one. And I literally posted it on Facebook. I'm like, hey, everyone, I want to speak now. Here's my vision board. It was like affirmate, and people liked it. And then it was maybe 3 months later. Someone was like, I remember seeing your vision board and there's an opportunity to speak. And it was a free speaking gig, but I'm like, I'm ready. Let's
Doesn't matter. Yes.
So just me sharing, I share a lot with what I'm doing, and I don't feel like people are going to take my dream away. If there are
Mm-hmm.
people that trying to pull you down and they don't
Mm-hmm.
believe it, clearly don't share it with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But find like-minded people that will help you, even a coach, a consultant that's going to help you to even take that to the next level. Um, so having the desire, affirming it, sharing it, verbal, writing it down, scripting it, whatever, to kind of get it into that physical, you
Mm-hmm.
know, space. And sometimes I would see things like I would see speakers, right? So it wouldn't intimidate me. I'm not comparing myself, but I'd be like, God, put me in those spaces or even better. Again, affirming
Mm-hmm.
this is where I need
Yes.
to be, right? Like our words hold so much power,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So that was helpful, sharing it, affirming it. And then it was like, what steps can I take to work towards this goal, this dream, this desire? So I would break down my things in steps, right? Like what aligned action can I take today? Right?
Shawniel, you did mention that before, aligned action, which I love that. What does that mean to you? Like when you are putting these steps down, are you in a space, because I know you said your manifestation is also of a spiritual nature. Are you getting divine whispers? Are you getting inspired action, inspired alignment? How does that process look like for you?
Yeah. So part of it again going back to manifesting,
Mhm.
goal setting with a spiritual twist. So the first step is just writing down a list, like taking inventory. Okay, if I want to become a speaker, where do I start? Right. So I'll just write it down. Maybe I need a speaker's coach, right? Maybe I need to look for opportunities for speaking. Same thing with the center. I want to be a wellness center. The first thing I did was like, what does it take? Right?
Mhm.
Where can I find someone that will help me to bring that dream to reality? The next step is meditation, sitting in prayer, right? Like, hey, God, please send those people and opportunities to me. Put the
Mhm.
right people and situations in place, having quiet moments to see if there's any downloads that will help you to navigate to where you
Mhm.
need to be, right? And the aligned action is like, if I want to be, a speaker, like for me, going back to therapy, if I wanted to have my own private practice, I knew I had to get licensed. I knew I needed experience. So I had to break down those steps instead of saying like, hey, I have this dream. Now I'm just going to wait.
Mhm.
You can't.
Mm. Mhm.
You can't. But the formula to that is like, if I have done everything that I needed to do, if I have put my goals into place, if I've shared it, if I'm actually taking those steps, I don't want to hold on to the dream too tight and not be flexible in how that will show
Mm.
up, right? If I'm
Yes.
holding on to it too tight and I'm like pressured into it
Mhm.
happening,
Mhm.
then you lose the magic of the journey
Yes.
and you feel so pressured. And it kind of goes back to scarcity or that feeling like I have to, other beliefs, like I have to work hard to get it, I have to force it. But that's
Right.
where faith comes in, right? So I always affirm, God, please send me that, or even better, just releasing that, surrendering that my dream, the way that I envision it, God probably has or the universe has a bigger and better vision of what that is. I need
Yes.
to leave room for that.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yes. When I first started getting into manifestation, it always reminded me to say whatever it is that you want, but then add or better, because it's so true that the universe is so expansive. And I read recently that we're all chasing that feeling. We want to be happy. We want to feel fulfilled. We want to be joyous. And you may think that a certain thing is going to bring that, but the universe, you get it, and it's probably a fleeting feeling. So I couldn't agree more that it's important to also like keep ourselves open into what it is sometimes and more so focus on the feeling it's going to bring you, and then to again not worry about how the journey has to look there. But what I love about your aligned action is it sounds like you are doing a lot of preparation, because it's so true about, okay, we can manifest all day, but we got to take action. But that action is doing your part to prepare yourself, and you're doing those common sense things, those things that you know you can take care of. But when it comes to people coming into your life and opportunities and everything else and the timing, that is what it kind of feels like is on the universe's side. So I love that idea and reminder of, yes, manifest, yes, feel your desire and don't do too hard. But at the same time, you need to prepare yourself for opportunity, because that's what they say luck is about, opportunity and preparation meeting. So I love that. Thank
I
you for
love that.
sharing.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a funny story about like surrendering the outcome.
Yes, please do.
When I was looking for my soulmate, I literally, like I wrote it out, I prayed about it, I did everything, and then I would be in the club, I'm like, "Are you my soulmate? Are you my soulmate?" Like, not enjoying the experience of being single, like, "Are you
That
my
Shawniel
soulmate?"
doing the A, B to the C to the D to the E to the F.
And then it just got so frustrating. It was just like, "Oh,
Mhm.
here's another one," right? Again, not enjoying that. And then I just decided, like, you know what? I'm just gonna surrender this. Like, if it happens, it happens.
That's
Because I was just frustrating myself
that's
and
it.
not even enjoying the dating experience. And
Mm.
I just remember that. And like when I released it, when I said, like, God, I'm just releasing it. If it happens, but I'm actually okay being single because I had done the prep work.
Yes.
And then like maybe a month later, that person came to me. And again, because I had that vision, I was holding on too tight. I was like looking at my list and I was like, well, he about 80% of this. And I was like, my friend, I was like, yeah, his height, it was his height. And I was like, yeah, his height, it's not there. And my friend was like, "Are you serious? Like, how does he make you feel? What are the
Mm,
important things on the list?" And then I
mhm,
was able to take a step back and just kind of like breathe through it and meditate. And I was like, "Oh yeah, I think about him all the time." But had I
mhm,
held onto it too tight, that list,
mm.
I would have lost like the love of my life, right?
Wow.
And he was like about 80, 85, like the height, but it
Yeah.
was fine. I'm short, so I had no business. But yeah, but it was that like when you have that fixed mindset or that fixed vision and you don't leave
Yes.
room, then that's what happens. So even on my vision boards these days, I leave a little space. I intentionally leave space
Oh, I love
for something
that.
else to come in that I didn't plan for.
Oh, I love that so much. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that is so relevant to today, the way the dating field sounds. I'm married, so I've been out of it for a while now, but so easy to just kind of swipe on people at this point and look like you're going through a catalog and trying to hit all these check marks. It doesn't leave room for like that humanness and that otherwise compatibility that would be there. So thank you so much for sharing that. But I love that you still did make that list because that's so important to be intentional about and then be able to recognize how much good there was and how many boxes were checked off when it was in front of your face. And I'm sure your man's is very happy too that you decided to go ahead. We talked about writing when it comes to manifesting. We're very heavy on the writing it out, speaking it out, like you said, which you've done amazing examples in your own life and literally manifesting your relationship and your career. Are there any other techniques that you would like to share that whether you utilize them yourself or that you just know about that you think would be helpful?
Yeah. So one of the other techniques that I love, because if we go back to limiting beliefs
Hmm.
and our emotions, they're all signals, right? So we have to have a place of coming from a place of curiosity to be able to examine them. So whenever I want to just test out if I truly believe that I can manifest the thing that I really desire, I like to do a body scan. So I like to
Mm-hmm.
hold that intention, that desire. So for instance, example of like I want to make $1 million. Let's
Hmm.
use that, right? So that like that seems so big. Like even when I say it,
Hmm.
I felt little butterflies in my stomach, right?
Hmm.
So I tell people when I'm working with them to manifest, I tell them to hold their vision in front of them and just from the top, close your eyes, take a deep breath. And from the top of your head to your forehead, to your nose, your mouth, all the way down to your toes, just notice if you feel any tension, tightness, any distress, even excite like other feelings like excitement. Like what
Okay.
is the feedback that your body is giving you?
Mhm.
And then what are the quality of thoughts? Like what came up for you
Mhm.
when you were thinking about that thing as it had happened? And
Mhm.
people would say, like, I have butterflies in my stomach. And I'm like, okay, let's focus on that area. What does that mean? Like, ask your body for a moment, what does that mean? And be like, I'm nervous,
Mhm.
right? So the acknowledgement of the feedback that your body is giving you and looking at your thoughts, like maybe you're questioning, like, can I really get there? Like, how is this going
Mhm.
to work? Um, I've heard people say like money is like the root of evil, like the beliefs that are coming up.
Yeah.
So even though you have this design, you feel it on the surface that you can get it rationally, sometimes on an emotional or thought level, it may be the opposite, right? And
Mhm.
so it's really being able to again write it out, talk it out, figure out how you need to heal from it. I had someone who had a lot of money trauma, and so
Mhm.
even though she wanted to make, I think she wanted to make over 200K, she was just like, ultimately, I don't know if I truly believe it. And I was like, that's
Mhm.
the first step of like acknowledging that. Right?
Yes. Good on
Just,
her.
what do you need? Like, how do we support you on that? And she was like, talked out her experience with money, the lack of her resources in her childhood, and then also what skills that she needed, right? Because confidence also goes by skill
Mm.
building, like helping your brain to be like, yeah, I can actually do this. So she
Mhm.
took like a course on money, was able to learn how to budget. She did all that based on the signals and the feedback her body
Yes.
was giving her. Instead of dismissing it and pretending, she was able to really utilize it for fuel to make sure that she was clear enough to get the things that she needed and that she had the skills to get the things that she needed. So that I kind of intertwined therapy
Mm-hmm.
and the manifesting in that sense of just that acknowledgement. And if you have negative beliefs, I also turn them into affirmations. Like, what is the opposite of
Mm-hmm.
that thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about like I'm a money magnet, right? Like especially
Yes.
kind of like runs away from me. I'm like, no, I'm a money magnet, right? And then she was like going around like I'm a money magnet, right? So that
Yes.
feeling feels better, right? Than the
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Mhm.
Oh my gosh, 100%. I love that so much. I think that body scan practice is so important for many of us because you are addressing the root issues as to why we aren't able to internalize some of these very possible things. So I love that. Thank you. And I'm definitely going to implement that more. I really appreciate how you look at these things in such a holistic way because even though our traditional therapy doesn't necessarily do body scans, I guess it makes so much sense that that would be a technique to really delve into somebody how they are literally feeling and then being able to interpret those feelings into words to describe whatever those, whether it is a fear, whether it is a limiting belief, or whether it is excitement, and being able to push up on that. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'm already feeling the transformative power of therapy just from these examples of what you are implementing in the wellness center. For somebody who maybe hasn't gone to therapy yet, for me, I just started a few years ago. And there's not a lot of people in my life that go to therapy. I feel like since 2020, to your point, there has been an increase. But even till just like, I don't know, a few years ago, it still felt very stigmatizing. I didn't even share right away when I was going to therapy. And then once I got more comfortable with it, I started purposefully sharing that I was going to therapy with my family and community and friends and whatnot. So, can you maybe share a little bit about whether it's your own experience for yourself or maybe some clients, how transformative therapy can be for people, and maybe even other resources that people can explore if they are interested in taking these steps on their healing journey, if they want to start doing inner work, but they're not exactly sure where to start, um, why therapies can be beneficial and other ways that people can begin.
Yes. So it is scary having
Mm.
to open that Pandora's box. I think a lot of people, especially people of color, have not been provided with the like a safe space to like express your emotions or feel safe to be able to share that, right? Or maybe even have the vocabulary to be like, I am feeling this way
Mm.
and experiencing this. And it's one thing to talk to a friend or a loved one, but when you're talking to someone who's trained to pick up on those patterns, to pick up on and help you to feel safe enough to want to share without feeling like you're going to be so dysregulated or I always call it hot, walking around like a hot pool of mess. Right? Like that has been trained to be able to like, hey, let's open up that Pandora's box a little bit, but
Mhm.
let's also teach you coping strategies and skills so that if you do get a little bit more emotional or dysregulated, we're going to ground you back before you even leave, right? Instead of just kind of sharing your emotions and your experiences with someone who's not trained, right?
Mhm.
Who's not biased. So I feel like therapy is a thing where you go and you have a safe space to say whatever you need to get it off your chest to be able to see how those physical and emotional sensations may be connected to something else, to know that there's a trained person that can pick up on things that you may not even be noticing and bring that up and say like how do we make those changes, somewhere where you can have a vent session, but they're also going to hold
Mhm.
you accountable. We're not going to just like leave it, right? We're like, how do we move past it, right? How do we heal from it?
Mhm.
And what's unique about my center is that we call it trauma healing. We are not just putting a band aid on your symptoms,
Mm.
we are helping you to get to the source to be able to heal it on both emotional, physical, and spiritual level. And then being able to say, how does that healing now transcend in other areas of your life? It's like a ripple effect. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen clients that have finally committed to therapy and they're doing their inner work, and then maybe they have a kid, and that heals that generational tie so that they also are moving forward and have a new way of looking at therapy and also their behaviors or approaches. So therapy is that safe space to really be able to do that in a contained way where you're not going to be walking around, you're like, how do I deal with this on my own? And that you're intentionally doing the necessary steps to move you forward in your life. So, a lot of people that have prolonged therapy, when they finally come and they find the right therapist, because the relationship is important,
Which I want to ask you about afterwards.
yeah, they're like, why didn't I come here before? Like they feel like a weight has been lifted, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a new way to look at things and to experience things. And they're just like, why didn't I do this sooner?
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard, not our practice because we really are intentional,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't hear complaints. We it's hard,
Mm-hmm.
but they're like, it's life changing for me and generations to come.
Yes,
It's healing.
exactly.
Mhm.
And Shawniel, you touched upon this. There a lot of people when I do um, talk to them about therapy and they've perhaps tried it in the past, a lot of people feel unfortunately kind of shut down from it when they've had one experience where they just haven't resonated with their therapist. Obviously, therapists are people and they are different. Just, they are going to have different ways and whatnot, and you just aren't going to always click with everyone. Do you have any tips and or recommendations for people who are interested in therapy, perhaps exploring it again, but they haven't had a great experience with a therapist? Like, how do you determine when a therapist is right for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, the first step would be to really shop around, right? Like I would say find your top
Shop around.
shop
I love
around,
that.
right?
So
Yeah, like
listen to that, people. She's saying shop, don't set it and commit. Don't feel like you need to commit. Literally shop around.
yeah.
Okay.
And I heard what you said, like you visited our website, it resonated with you.
Mhm.
Most therapists do a consultation, right? So that you can have like a 15 to 20-minute consultation. Make sure you're asking them questions like, what techniques do you use here? This is what I'm experiencing. How will you help me? Right? You can ask and interview your therapist to make sure that they align with us too. We have a client care coordinator who will hear what you are experiencing and match you with the most appropriate therapist on our team. And even if it's not the one that you requested, we are listening to make sure that their skills, their experiences, their personality is going to be what you're looking for. So the consultation, looking at their website, asking them specific questions. And when you go for your initial intake, which is the therapist asking you a lot of questions about your history, don't feel afraid to ask them too more questions about how they approach therapy, right? How do you create safe space? Have you taken cultural sensitivity trainings? Like all our therapists are primed and screened to make sure that they have the necessary skills to create the safe space for people of color and any diverse group.
Mhm.
But you can ask those questions. And if you find that you're not clicking with a therapist, do not give up on therapy. Just keep on shopping around for the right therapist. So don't give up on the therapeutic process, but relationships are so important and it's the foundation. So if you're not connecting, it's okay to either share that with your therapist or just say like, hey, I would like to kind of, find a new person. And we give our clients permission. We ask them for feedback. How are things going? And we want to hear that. Therapists want to hear that feedback. So don't feel afraid to do that or make that shift if it doesn't feel right.
I like how you said, don't count out the process just because you just may not completely resonate with the first or second or third therapist. You will find that click, you will find somebody, and it is it can be so healing. Thank you.
Mm.
Shawniel, if there's one thing that you would want listeners to take from this episode, what would your one lasting reminder be?
I would say that awareness is empowering, right? Like being able to just take the time to listen to yourself, listen to your feelings, listen to your emotions, look at your patterns without judgment, right? Not beating yourself up, but really understanding, like, why do I do or feel or behave the way that I do? And what support do I need to get to where I want to be in my life, right? And know that this is a journey. I know a lot of us can be perfectionists or like waiting for the ultimate destination, like you said, the Z, right? But it's a continuous journey. So approach it with non judgmental stance and be curious, because your body, your mind will tell you what you need if you really just slow down and really listen to it. And there's support out there to help support you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Shawniel, for sharing all your wisdom and personal experiences around the importance of making healing a priority so that we can empower ourselves to live our best lives. I want to thank our friends for joining us on this episode. If you enjoyed this episode and this conversation, please remember to leave a 5-star rating on the podcast and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And remember, by embracing the power of mindset, addressing our limiting beliefs, and seeking support when we need it, we can all find our own path towards inner transformation and fulfillment. Keep shifting those minds, and I'll see you in the next episode.